Yo guys, Future Soul here with just a quick warning that this is not going to be a spoiler-free discussion. At this point in time, I have basically 100%ed my file on Pragmata, so I will be discussing it in full. Past Soul is about to make a joke about the fact that he finished the game. He is lying. I am not. Believe me, not him. Anyway, if you would like to avoid any major spoilers, I heavily suggest coming back after you have finished the game for yourself or you have seen everything that you need to see. Other than that, I think we're good. Past Soul, start us off. Yes, it's true. I have officially beaten Pragmata. And guess what? It actually is a Mega Man game. Hey, what's good, Joe? Soul here, and welcome back to the story mode. So, for anybody that doesn't know, Capcom's next major release in Pragmata comes out at the time of this recording tonight. It is officially Thursday, the 16th of April. It's dropping worldwide at 9 o'clock, and I cannot wait to get my hands on this game. I did see it a couple, I saw it last year, and I got really curious about this because, you know, the dad and daughter simulator, it always gets me, you know what I'm saying? I'm a big sucker for The Last of Us, you know what I'm saying? Like, I love this kind of thing. What was the name of that one indie game with anyway, love this kind of thing, right? So, obviously, it's a crazy little sci-fi game from Capcom. They've been cooking up crazy recently. We just had Resident Evil 9, and that game apparently cooked, as far as I'm aware. I'm not caught up on the Resident Evil series yet, but I eventually will be. Stick around if you want to see that journey, right? But one of the things that caught my eye the most was Pragmata, this like crazy little RPG situation, this action RPG situation from Capcom. It looked really cool. I'm big on sci-fi stuff. I love sci-fi energy, and this is precisely what that is. I have tried to avoid like any major like story or like gameplay information as much as I could, because recently I've come to understand that going into things completely blind that I am interested in, or at least mostly blind, is usually how I get the most enjoyment out of it. So I've tried to do everything I can to avoid anything crazy in regards to this game. Obviously, any major showcases, whether it be like the PlayStation State of Plays or the Xbox showcases or whatever, I don't think it showed up in a Nintendo Direct, did it? I know it's gonna be on Switch, so maybe it was in a Direct, and I did see gameplay and stuff there. So anything I know was only from, like, you know, those official trailers that were kind of a little bit harder to escape from. From what I saw, I was enamored with the concepts presented, and I was just like, yeah, no, that's a day one cop. And I was shocked to see that not only was, you know, the game like relatively getting closer and closer, they moved the release date up. Like, you almost never see that, especially this day and age with how long it takes to make games. Like, every game that you've ever been excited for is usually getting delayed a couple months, you know what I'm saying? So to see them move the release date up like that, a different level of confidence. They're like, this game is more than ready. People want to play this game. Let's do it. Let's give it to them, right? So here we are, pretty much like 2 weeks earlier than we usually would have been from the original release, and the game drops tonight. I am ecstatic. I cannot wait to get my hands on this game. That being said, I wanted to utilize this new strategy that I'm doing for the channel, where I have Past Me talk about his expectations, what he wants to see and stuff like that from the game, and then Future Soul will inevitably take over once I've gotten the gameplay and my first impressions on the game thought out and recorded, right? So you're gonna see a couple of different symbols. You're gonna see this, and you're gonna see this. Those two symbols are gonna indicate who's talking, whether it be Past Soul or Future Soul. Past Soul, me, is going to give you all of my thoughts in regards to what I expect from this game, if I think it's going to be good, if I think it's going to be clunky, whatever. And then Future Soul is going to confirm or deny that based on what he's played. With all that being said, I think it's about time we just go ahead and hop into it. And we usually only talk about 3 major things for now, especially for like a first impressions, but I think later down the line when we do stuff like this, especially for like major reviews, I think I'll set up much bigger, more in-depth categories that we could talk about, right? Because I'm going into this completely unscripted because unfortunately I didn't have as much time as I would have liked to have recorded this, so we're gonna jump right into it, okay? First things first, I'm gonna talk about my assumptions for the gameplay. Based on what I've seen, based on what I've heard, it is very action heavy, but also like semi-puzzle into, like, there's like puzzle integration in there to an extent. Again, I don't know what that means. I don't completely understand. I've, again, tried to avoid as much as I could on that subject, but for the most part, it does appear that there's going to be some like crazy weird action situation in which the little girl, I think her name is Diana, utilizes her powers as, I think she's an android, right? She utilizes her powers as an android to kind of like soften up or like destabilize all of the other mechs and stuff that you're going to be fighting throughout your journey, and you're utilizing that through these puzzle mechanics. And then once you have solved these little individual puzzles during each fight, you are able to gun them down with whatever weapons the dude is using. I don't even know dude's name yet, right? But it's gonna be like very weird. I assume it's gonna be something strange to get used to at first, but once you really get it down pat, I have to imagine that it's gonna be so much fun and it's gonna be so interesting, and there's probably gonna be a lot of different like unique puzzle situations to utilize, like different debuffs and different like stagger situations to, to get some kind of an advantage. I also like to imagine that this is gonna be something that heavily applies to the bosses too, but I also imagine that it's gonna be very different for the bosses, in which it's not gonna be as easy to like stagger them and stuff like that. It's going to be much more heavier, in-depth little miniature puzzles and things like that to get them off guard, so that you could, have a little bit of a frame to do some damage. You have like a little window that you have to open up specifically so that you could do some kind of damage to them. Again, that's an assumption. I have to imagine that there's some like cooldown moments in between, right? Because there can't be just action all the time. I have to imagine there's some kind of like maybe like stealthy areas and things like that. Maybe you have the option in certain areas or situations to kind of like, stealthily move through rooms or move through certain areas without drawing too much attention to yourself. Because again, I don't know if there's like an XP situation here, because I think I recall somebody calling it an RPG. I don't know entirely about that, I could be wrong on that, but usually a game like this doesn't operate too much like an RPG. But again, I'd be glad to be wrong. I love RPGs, so if it is an RPG, hey, you know what I'm saying? I imagine there is going to be some kind of skill tree system, right, in which you are fighting these enemies, you're gaining some kind of points, and you're utilizing that towards some kind of skill tree, whether it's to upgrade your weapons or to upgrade Diana's like powers or whatever. And you can utilize that to, have an easier time as you fight through the game, fight through bigger and badder baddies, right? But again, I also imagine that there's going to be some kind of downtimes where you could just do little things here and there, like some kind of rest areas that you can, use a workbench or something, or if you even need a workbench. Again, I'm not entirely sure. I can't even begin to imagine what the downtimes would look like for a game like this, right? Because every time I look at this game, obviously, I'm thinking of like The Last of Us, you know what I'm saying? I'm imagining like what downtimes in that game look like, and it was essentially a lot of looting. You were just going around the area just looting stuff, right? You were just getting as much equipment as you could before the next inevitable major event would occur. And I imagine it would be a very similar position here, right? And it kind of worked that way in Resident Evil as well, right? Where you're not necessarily, you're going around, you're doing some looting or whatever on the occasional, but for the most part, it's just kind of like a lot more puzzle solving, a lot more like, getting this to go to this next place, right? I think this game is going to be a lot more linear, and I think it's going to be like more, heavily involved like pathways and set pieces and things like that it's going to carefully guide you through, but it's also going to, it's not going to feel like a tight-knit hallway, you know what I'm saying? It's going to feel, very big in scope, but it's still going to be like a guided playthrough in terms of linearity. So that's where my general thoughts are with that. I really do hope in the case of like the skill tree situation that it does play out like an RPG, because obviously it'll incentivize me to fight more enemies, and if I'm getting rewarded for that, that would be cool. I can't imagine there's like a currency, right? Okay, obviously you're getting points and stuff like that probably from killing machines or whatever, so you're probably using that currency to buy upgrades for yourself, for your suit, for your weapon, for Diana. And that is probably how, a majority of the progression is going to go. I also imagine there's probably not going to be a lot of like heavy decision making or anything like that in regards to like major gameplay changing anything within the story or something like that. But again, we'll get to that during the story section. But for the most part, I feel like this is going to be like, you get through the gameplay segment and then you get to that next bit of story, and that's going to be like the driving force is going to be that back and forth between just epic gameplay and like really deep and, heavy story and stuff like that. That is my general thoughts on the gameplay. Hey, Future Soul, the mic is in your hands, brother. What are you thinking? Let us know. Past Soul, you absolute demon. You got it pretty much bar for bar, nail on the head with your predictions, right? Again, like I said, I avoided most, if not all, of the gameplay and trailers that they put out for this game after like the first initial two, once the game started to resurface for its marketing, right? So I actually had no idea how the gameplay worked, and I nailed that sucker. That's crazy, right? But enough tooting my own horn. Let's go ahead and confirm what I got right and talk about any additional things that I have in mind, right? To start things off, no, it is technically not an RPG. It is in fact an action third-person shooter, actually, right? And the way it works is that Diana utilizes her powers as a Pragmata, it's, you know, that's what she's officially called, to pretty much take control of the other androids that are pretty much trying to attack you thanks to Edis, right? So she is able to hack into these other androids, and you have to solve a little bit of a puzzle. And by puzzle, I mean you have to find a way to get through whatever nodes you can within, you know, a certain time frame, so that you can open up these robots to deal actual damage, not extra damage, actual damage. Because without doing this, without hacking them, you are not doing a lick of damage. You are doing like 10 to 20 pieces of damage every shot, right? And it's a really interesting loop, right? Because you're doing this constantly throughout like the entirety of the playthrough. You're fighting multitudes of enemies. Sometimes there's like a bunch of them on screen at once, and you need to find a way to deal with all of them, or as many as you can. Obviously, you do get other weapons, although all of those other weapons do have limits on them. So you are constantly picking them up, using them, and throwing them away, and then you have to kind of refill yourself with those weapons as well. Obviously, those other weapons are pretty much usually always stronger than your base pistol, but obviously you're going to spend a lot of your time upgrading that base pistol. Did I say pistol? That's funny as hell. But you will spend a lot of your time upgrading that base pistol. However, you are utilizing a ton of different weapons. There's a pretty wide variety of them too. It's pretty solid, right? My favorite to use personally was the shotgun. The shockwave gun is what it's called, right? But essentially, you need to open up these nodes. You need to have Diana hack them and open up the nodes so that you can deal actual damage to them, because otherwise you will be there forever. And it's a very, very interesting concept. And initially when I saw it, I thought I was gonna get cooked constantly, but honestly, it blends in so well that you get used to those puzzles relatively quickly. Pretty much after that first initial hour of the game of just farting around with the combat, I pretty much felt natural with the combat system. It was actually extremely intriguing, and of course they do a very, very good job in the tutorial slowly introducing you to new concepts without like making it feel overwhelming. For example, like you're using the pistol most of the time, but then inevitably you get your hands on the shockwave gun, which serves as like a shotgun, or the stasis gun, or the sticky bombs, or well, you don't get the sticky bombs very early. You get those pretty much way later. But essentially, you know, they do a good job, like, kind of just drip feeding you all of this new stuff in turn, so that you're not overwhelmed when you're faced with, like, a new enemy and a new weapon and stuff like that. And then on top of that, they introduce these little, like, debuff situations in which, yes, like, I pretty much nailed this on the head. There is, like, different unique nodes that you can install, essentially, right? I forgot what they're called off the top of my head. There's an actual official name for them. I'm sure when I'm editing this, I'll put the proper name up there, or I'll, you know, show it to you directly on screen. But essentially, you are using these specific nodes to deal debuffs, right? However, just like the weapons, they are limited, right? You are using them over and over again, and then eventually they will run out, right? So essentially, for example, when you're fighting a bot, you will summon your hacking ability. Diana will start the hack, and you'll go through the nodes, and you'll have the option to use one of the specific nodes that you might have installed on yourself, whether it be the defense debuff or the shock debuff, which essentially just kind of paralyzes them, or, you know, whatever else. You can use it during that initial hack, but just know that they have limits on them. So when you do hack them, you're using up that node, and then you'll use it 2 more times, and then it's gone. You have to replace that with another one that you find, or when you inevitably get back to the shelter, we'll talk about that later, you need to replace it, right? So it's a very interesting gameplay loop that's super interesting. I love the way they handled it. It's good, I think. Initially, when I first saw how limited the nodes and the other weapons were, I was a little disappointed, but once I got more into it and really started to understand the combat, it made plenty of sense, right? This is not a like Breath of the Wild situation by any means. And not that Breath of the Wild even had a bad weapon system by any means. I think it makes sense that the weapons were limited, but in this case it makes plenty of sense, especially because you can, you know, pretty much reobtain them anytime, and you're constantly upgrading them as well, meaning that they won't feel as, you know, flimsy and used up nearly as fast as they are when you first get started with them. And what's also very interesting is that these nodes, everything that I mentioned, all the paralysis and the debuffs and everything here, they work perfectly fine on the bosses. In fact, it's probably for the best that you save a lot of the good ones that you have pretty much installed on you. If you know you're going to be facing a boss soon, it's a pretty good idea to have those on hand at all times, right? There's going to be a lot of times where you need to constantly open up nodes so that you can deal damage to the boss because they have a lot more health, right? So you're constantly reopening them as much as humanly possible throughout your battle, while also avoiding any real damage and stuff like that, so that you can get in good hits and not die, for Christ's sakes, right? But on top of that, you do have the option to utilize these other nodes so that you can paralyze them or deal more damage, or you know, things along those lines. And it's a super useful tactic, right? And that is where it really dawned on me. Like, if these node situations weren't limited, or just like completely random RNG, it wouldn't be as fluid as it is, right? You could be as like strategic as you want with how you equip your nodes and stuff like that before going in to fight a boss, so that you know what you're getting into and you have a general idea of how you can deal with them if you strategically use your nodes during the boss fight. It's really astounding, and I really do enjoy the way that this was handled. The bosses are also extremely cool. They're super like cinematic, for lack of a better term here. They are really nice to fight. Like, they have varied weapons and movements, and they all feel unique to fight, and it's so astounding how they got these bosses working. It's so much fun to fight a boss. Like, obviously, even fighting against the fodder is nice, but like going up against a boss, it always feels so epic. Like, you are like locked in, or at least I was. I can't speak for everybody, but I had a really good time fighting these bosses. They all felt extremely unique. The game is designed to be linear, so because of that, like, each zone that you go to, while you can backtrack, and actually you're meant to backtrack a lot, there's going to be a lot of item hunting that you're meant to do. There's a lot of like different things that you can collect that you can bring back to base. There's a lot of different, you know, weapons that you're going to want to find and maybe include into your arsenal, or maybe that you just want to use throughout that level. Maybe there's like certain upgrades that you might want to get for you and Diana. So because of that, you know, it is designed to be linear, but it's also meant to be like, you know, bearable to be able to find things, right? It would be astronomically frustrating if this game was any form of like open world or anything like that. So thank God for the linearity here, and I think it makes it a lot more interesting too, because, you know, the first time through you never really know what you're going to run into, and because of that it makes for like very good and well-made level design, right? Whether there are certain sections where you got to do a little bit of platforming, obviously there's going to be a lot of like different battle zones where you get locked into fights and stuff like that. I really like the way they handled the level design. Obviously there are zones that are a little more open for exploration. You are meant to go out of your way to like go to different areas and stuff like that, and obviously there's things that are like blocked off for the time being that you're meant to come back to later once you have the proper abilities, so that you can get all of the collectibles and stuff like that. And it makes for really good level design. I really like the way that they have things set up here. Obviously, there's not like as many set pieces as one would probably expect from a game like this. Like, I'm usually thinking like going through and maybe running into like a warm body or something like that, and they stop to really like examine it and things like that. That doesn't happen often in this game at all, but that's perfectly fine. You know, it doesn't interrupt the flow or the action at all. Like, you pretty much know exactly when you're gonna run into a cutscene because of, you know, how the area is designed. And I think I'm okay with the fact that there's not as many set pieces, right? It kind of lends into the fact that, you know, this is very much an action heavy game, so they don't want to take you out of that, and they want to do that, you know, as least as they possibly can afford to. So yeah, you are going through linear level design, but I think that's perfectly fine for this game in particular. There are little moments here and there though where Hugh and Diana will like just stop and take in the scenery if you so choose to interact with the little notifications that pop up in certain areas. Diana will point something out, and it's up to you if you want to, have a conversation with her about those things. 9 times out of 10, you're gonna do it, because why the hell wouldn't you, right? But I do think that that's pretty cute. I think that's a neat little detail. If you ever want to slow down in the midst of the level, I think that's a good way to go about it. And, it's a good way to see, Diana's character develop throughout the game. She's always so curious about every little thing when it comes to like Earth and Earth culture and stuff like that, obviously, because she is an android, she's a Pragmata, she's never been there, so she wants to learn as much about it as she possibly can. So it definitely makes sense to, stop and just take in the sights and scenery with her whenever you can. But I think that's a good trade-off for the the general set pieces that would interrupt your flow, right? So I'm totally with that. But generally speaking, the biggest cooldown moments are the times that you spend in the shelter. That is meant to be your primary cooldowns in between heavy major story moments. Right after you fight a boss, usually you're going back to the shelter. Essentially, the shelter is the centerpiece on the moon, and you'll pretty much use this as your base of operations. You use this place to ship out to different levels or to different zones, and you'll constantly be coming back to the shelter. This is where pretty much all of your stuff resides as well, right? All of your upgrades, all of your collectibles, all of your outfits and things like that, just pretty much everything, right? So you're going to be spending a lot of time at the shelter, making sure you're getting all your upgrades in, getting all of your collectibles, getting all of your outfits together. You know what I'm saying? If you want to throw a fit together with Hugh and Diana, you can do that there. And doing all the, fun little dialogue options to get to know Diana a little bit better, and so Diana can get to know Hugh a little bit better. But it kind of serves as an in-between because, we're getting to know both of them at the same time through these conversations, One of the most fun things about coming back to the shelter is whenever you have the Earth Rems, which is essentially these little chips that you give to Diana so that she can replicate little Earth items here and there to play with in the shelter, right? To get to know Earth culture a little bit. And there's a good solid chunk of them. I think there's like 20 or something like that, maybe less. I gotta look back at it, but there's a decent chunk of them. There's one for like pretty much every major zone in the game, so you always want to make sure to get those and bring them back to the shelter so that Diana has stuff to talk about and stuff to play with, and you get to know her a little bit better through that. And it unlocks really cute little cutscenes and idle animations and things like that for her to do around the shelter. So it's really, really cool. You're going to be spending a lot of time here. That's your cooldown, that's your downtime. Obviously, once again, on the money, there is indeed a skill tree, right? But again, it's primarily accessible through the shelter. In the center of the shelter, you're going to use all of the currency that you've been grabbing, the limb, essentially, and you're going to be utilizing that to upgrade all of your different weapons, making it so that they're available for you within the shelter. You're utilizing that to unlock new nodes, new specialty nodes that you can use against enemies, that you can equip on yourself in the shelter before you ship out. You're using those to upgrade Hugh's suit. Obviously, you're utilizing those to, make it so that your thrusters are a little bit faster and a little bit more fluid. You're making it so that your health is better. You're doing everything under the sun here in terms of upgrading, right? And this also obviously applies to Diana. You're making sure to upgrade her abilities, her hacking abilities, so that you can deal more damage when you're hacking. You can use it so that you are upgrading Hugh's suit. Again, you're making it so that you're getting more defense, more health, generally speaking, and you're upgrading the damage on your primary pistol. Or, eventually it turns into a submachine gun, but you could swap between the two. Me personally, I didn't like the machine gun as much, or I didn't like the submachine gun as much. I liked the pistol way better. Personally, it did more damage. It was a little more consistent, and even though it was shorter on ammo, it was just so much better. You know what I'm saying? And that recoil wasn't nearly as bad to deal with on that. So yeah, you're doing all of your upgrading in the skill tree at the shelter as well. One of the things it does seem that I was wrong about was the fact that there was going to be some kind of decision making that would impact the general story. One of you lied to me at the beginning of my stream when I streamed the game day one. You know who you are. I kind of figured that wasn't going to be the case. The more I got into it, I'm like, oh no, this doesn't seem like one of those games where you're making like heavy changes and decisions and stuff like that. Like, this seems relatively straightforward, especially like how you go about collecting things and stuff like that. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to be able to change up the story that heavily. right? So that's totally fine though. I think they did a good job with the general story anyway, but we'll probably talk about that next. Overall, the gameplay is extremely good, very well done, very well developed. It felt good, it looked good, and I was enamored with it the entire time of my playthrough. Put in a solid almost 40 hours, I think, getting all the collectibles, doing all the post-game and everything. It was absolutely extravagant. They did a bang-up job with this one. They cooked hella, and I'm super happy to say that this is easily, at least gameplay wise, we'll talk more about it at the end too, but gameplay wise, for sure, one of my games of the year, easily. But you know, it's still relatively early. It's only about to hit May, so we got some time. But again, it's a little early to be saying that, but I'm gonna go ahead and pass it back to Pass Soul. The next category that I have listed here is, in fact, the story. Now, again, I know very little, and I kind of tried to put it out of my mind from the last time I've seen, like, any gameplay. Literally, they released another trailer recently. I'm not even watching it. Like, I don't want to watch trailers for stuff anymore, for things that I'm excited about, right? So, as far as the story goes, all I know is that there was, like, we're living, like, crazy far in the future. This is a far off future situation in which Earth has been essentially taken over by like machines or something like that, and there was a group of people that was set to, like, you know, go down there and handle the situation, like see what's going on, see what's, you know, maybe habitable, or what resources they could get out of Earth and stuff like that. Kind of like, it's kind of a near situation, but way worse, way more dangerous, I think, for humans. So, you know, they had to get geared up and stuff like that, but I think something went wrong with their ship, or something happened with one of the machines catching the ship, and it pretty much killed most of the crew except one dude. Again, I don't remember dude's name or anything like that. And, you know, he's kind of just in survival mode, just going just place to place, just trying to survive. Maybe he's still trying to, you know, complete his mission, whatever that may be. And he stumbles across Diana, this little android girl that still happens to be extremely helpful, and she can, like, you know, stagger robots and stuff like that. She has kind of a connection to all of the machines on Earth at this point in time, and so, you know, they're utilizing that power, they're taking advantage of that power to, you know, scope through and see what they can do about, you know, helping Earth, right? I think it's gonna be a very heartwarming story. Like, it's gonna be something that, like, you know, I think I do recall, like, a scene where he was trying to teach Diana how to high five. I'm a sucker for that stuff. I'm a sucker for heart-wrenching stuff like that, man. She didn't know what a high five was, and it killed me. I was like, oh my god, it's Cloud all over again. He doesn't understand, and it's like, I love stuff like, I'm a sucker for people learning, you know, human emotion. I'm a sucker for machines, or for, you know, very traumatized people learning how to be people in their own way. You know what I'm saying? Project Hail Mary, great example of another sci-fi flick that does this very well. If you want to go see that, I'm not advertising or anything. I'm just gassing it up, completely unrelated. But regardless, I think this is going to be a gut-wrenching tale. Something is probably bad is going to happen to one of the two of them, and I'm going to be mad as all hell when it does happen. But that's the good bones of a story. I think that usually when it can get me like that, when it can get to a point where it can upset me like that, that means it's got the great bones of a story. You know what I'm saying? Or the bones of the story are good, right? And I think I'm going to have a very strong attachment to it. I feel like I'm going to very deeply enjoy this story, and it's going to be one of the driving forces that continues to get me through the gameplay and stuff like that. And, you know, again, I imagine that the gameplay in of itself is going to be fun. I have seen, like, most people that have played the demo, they have pretty much just praised how, like, unique and fun the gameplay style is, and I feel like that's going to heavily complement the story in of itself. And I'm really looking forward to that. I really do hope they did a good job, and I really think they had something really neat on their hands with this. How you come up with a concept like this is absolutely crazy, but again, I love Nier Automata, so the concept of machines taking over, while scary, is also really cool in concept. So that's where I'm at as far as, like, what the story is looking like. Future Soul, are we enjoying the story so far? What are we thinking, gang? So it's really funny. The gameplay nailed that sucker right on the head. The story, oh my god, I could not be more wrong, and it's crazy. You essentially play as a worker named Hugh. You and your team work under a company called Delphi, and they have their operations going on the moon. You are sent to the moon to check in with the team that is working on the Cradle, which is this giant 3D printer utilizing a very specific I don't want to call it currency, but material called lunafilament to essentially replicate pretty much anything utilizing this material, right? Obviously, they lost contact with the team that was working up there, and so it was up to Hugh and his crew's team to see what the hell was going on. Very clearly, you know, something went wrong. Everything was just not the way it should have been. Nobody was there. Nobody was answering. You go to check it out, and a sudden moonquake hits, and pretty much all of Hugh's team is eradicated, which really sucks right off rip. And so Hugh is the last one standing, and you know, he barely survives, and he is saved by an android named Diana, a Pragmata that was developed on the Cradle and essentially hidden away for a very specific reason, right? And so Hugh and Diana are essentially trying to find a way to get Hugh back to Earth. And obviously throughout the game, your relationship with Diana is developing a lot. You get to know her, you get to understand her, and you come to care about her a lot, you know, same as Hugh. And Hugh's general plan is to just take both of you back to Earth. But obviously for a majority of the game, you are dealing with Edis, a rogue AI that is controlling pretty much all of the Cradle's like lunafilament development situations to create androids to oppose you and stop you. And you know, you're pretty much unregistered there, and you are a threat. So they're trying to take you out, so it's up to you and Diana to utilize her powers to get off the moon. Eventually, you come to truly understand what was going on with the Pragmata, with the Cradle, with the 3D printing, and most importantly, with the dead filament. Essentially, you get an idea of what's happening with that because another Pragmata named 8 is essentially trying to quote-unquote fulfill the Doctor's wish to have everybody fully understand what the dead filament is and why it's dangerous. But clearly she doesn't understand what she's doing, and she's trying to just send these packages of dead filament to Earth, which is guaranteed to infect people and kill them, because dead filament is not meant to come into contact with, you know, human skin. If it does, it kills them pretty fast, right? So it is obviously Hugh and Diana's, you know, prerogative to stop her from letting that happen. And it's you know, it's very straightforward. You know, the more you learn about all of the science that went behind everything, what happened to the initial Doctor's daughter, why he created the Pragmatas to, you know, help heal her and stuff like that. It is a pretty generally sad story. I will say it is on the more, I don't want to say generic, especially when all of the concepts that are presented here are extremely unique, with the Pragmata, with the filament, with the 3D printing and stuff like that. Like, all of the concepts here are extremely unique, but the way the story is woven together feels a little, you know, simple, you know, in a way. We have very, you know, generic story beats of, like, you know, getting to know Hugh and Diana and stuff like that. Obviously their relationship develops pretty fast, if I'm honest, but obviously, you know, Diana hasn't done anything wrong, and, you know, Hugh can't help but love the kid. You know, she didn't do anything wrong, and she's so curious, just like he was when he was a kid. So, you know, they kind of understand each other a lot. Obviously, you know, what's happening with the Doctor and things like that, and how 8 came to misunderstand what he actually wanted was, you know, the primary threat to Earth. And, you know, again, the way the story beats were handled, pretty standard, pretty bog standard. Like, it's nothing you haven't seen before. It's nothing extremely groundbreaking, but it's still a very heartwarming story, and it has a lot of very fun themes about, like, parenthood and things like that that really, you know, starts to resonate with you the more you connect with it. And it's really, really good, I think. Even if it is a little on the simpler side, I still think it's a very well-made story. I enjoyed it a lot. Now we hand it back to Passel. And lastly, the music. I love me some music. I think all of you guys probably love yourself some music too. And I imagine we're gonna have, okay, I don't completely, you know, I'm not like a music theorist. I'm not like, you know, like advanced in music or anything like that. I'm very simple. If I like a sound, I'm listening to that sound as often as humanly possible. And I have to imagine, as far as music goes, I've never, as far as like Capcom music, like I'm always thinking like, you know, Phoenix Wright music, you know what I'm saying? I'm thinking of Devil May Cry music. I'm thinking of Marvel vs. Capcom music. I'm thinking of Street Fighter music. You know what I'm saying? And usually 9 times out of 10, they cook. They can cook with a soundtrack. You know what I'm saying? Capcom I could trust with music. Nearly, not as much as Sega. You know what I'm saying? The Sega soundtracks are on a different plane of existence, right? But, you know, Capcom, they can do some damage. I've been using Capcom music in a lot of my videos for years now. So I'm really hoping that they have a soundtrack that very heavily complements, you know, all of the like epic moments as well as all the more tender moments between the characters, and just something that, you know, fits the general theming of the world here, of the game in of itself, like all of the sci-fi stuff that's going on. I would really love to hear some like crazy like synth stuff, maybe if we could get that every now and again, maybe for a cool boss fight or something like that. I don't know. I would really like to see them get really wicked with a lot of the music in this game. I think they have a really cool opportunity to do some really weird and crazy stuff with the music. So that's where my head is at with that. Future Soul, we doing a little bit of this? We doing this? How we feeling? I don't know why I keep doing this, where I have music as the final category, when it's gonna definitely be the least riveting of my opinions here. Obviously, the music is fire. Maybe I have to give it another listen, but obviously there's nothing like insanely standout or anything. Obviously, when I look at a game like this, I compare it to, you know, other dad simulators like The Last of Us or God of War and stuff like that, mostly Last of Us, and, you know, I don't have any like standout like headbangers that come to mind when I think of Pragmata. Obviously, though, generally speaking, the music blends very well with the general game in of itself. Obviously, the slower moments are extremely serene. They managed to throw in a lot of like little fun piano situations here and there, but then during like obviously the high like action set pieces and moments and things like that, they have synth, they don't have guitars or anything like that, but they have like a lot of just, you know, high energy sci-fi music playing in the background. Obviously, it's very fitting for the theming and the tone of every situation, and they do a very good job with that. I really like the sounds within this game. I think they cooked very heavily. Again, though, it's not like I'm expecting any like, you know, like standout themes or anything like that. You know, I'm not thinking, you know, but you know, I think of The Last of Us. You know that theme by heart just from me saying it. You can hear that guitar. Pragmata doesn't have anything like that to my knowledge. Again, maybe if I played through it again, maybe I'll change my tune. But as of right now, I can't really think of any standout bangers or anything like that. But generally speaking, the music is very well made, it's very well crafted, and, you know, it doesn't interfere with the gameplay, and I think it complements it very well. So there is that. Past Soul, any final thoughts? All that being said, that just about does it for Past Soul's thoughts on everything. I really do hope that I'm enjoying the game. I've been looking forward to this game for a good minute now, and most of the people that have played any form of demos or early access stuff has been saying pretty much nothing but positive things about the game. Obviously, the reviews dropped pretty early, and it was pretty much like 8 out of 10 across the board, which is always a beautiful sign, right? So I'm really looking forward to this game. This is easily one of my more anticipated games for this year, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to sink hella hours into it, and we're probably going to do some kind of like review situation eventually for it, so we'll play it by ear. But that's Past Soul signing off. So, Future Soul, the mic is in your hands. Let us know. Little did that doofus know that this is probably the closest to a review that we're gonna get, because I have finished the game. But in his defense, he was recording this under the impression that this was gonna be a first impressions, because I thought that I would have this video out much sooner. I didn't think that I would completely finish the game before I did this, but I'm not gonna do this again. We'll probably set up a more you know, dedicated situation for like a review going for reviews and stuff like that going forward, or maybe I'll just organize it better in which I do pre-record the review aspect of it, and then I'll go in with my actual thoughts down the line. But we'll play it by ear. You know, we'll have to see. But generally speaking, overall, easily right now, this is currently my game of the year of 2026. This is easily the most addictive game I've gotten my hands on, next to like Mugenics and stuff like that. I really just could not pry myself away from the game once I got it booted up again. You know, every time I had to take a break from it, I was sick to my stomach not being able to play, because it was just so much fun. The way, you know, the game is beautiful. This is a very stunning game to look at, graphically speaking. The way they have everything set up, from the lighting to the colors to the atmosphere to just everything everything they have set up here, to the visual sets and everything like that. They cooked so heavily with the designs of everything, including obviously, you know, the character designs for Hugh and Diana. They look very, very good. They did a just stellar job with the designs of everything here on the moon, and I think that all the general concepts are actually just incredible. Like, I like sci-fi a lot, and I think this is just like one of those things where this is gonna be like one of my standards for, like, you know, like, it's so, because this is Capcom we're talking about, and when it comes to Capcom, the way they I always forget until I get my hands on a Capcom game. Dude, they are anime as hell with everything that they do. Everything is just so, like, semi-shonen coded. It's so fire. You know what I'm saying? So getting into Pragmata, I didn't think it was going to move the way it did. It was so heavy in its action. The way it was just so well animated and crafted. It's so just cool. Just aura across the board. I absolutely adore it. Obviously, I think a lot of people seem to agree that the probably weakest aspect about this game is its story, and it's not because the story in of itself is bad, it's because it's simple and a lot more straightforward. But I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, right? Especially in an era where we've had so many, like, crazy and unique original concepts that, you know, it gets harder and harder to create something completely original that it's never been done before ever. And I think we're in an era where we could use more simple stuff like this, you know, just a straightforward, like, here, you know, here's a nice little heartwarming story of a, you know, of a family-themed situation between this human trying to teach an android what it's like to be a human, right? And it's really endearing the way it was handled. I think it was just generally good. Even if it is simple, even if it is straightforward, I still think it was done very well because I'm attached to the characters, I like the story, I still felt engaged, and I felt satisfied by the end of it, right? So I think it's a great game. This is a phenomenal game. I can't wait for an excuse to go through it again, right? Because again, I've done pretty much everything at this point. The only thing I'm missing is going through on, like, a hard difficulty. So maybe eventually I'll sit down with that and, I don't know, set that up as like a stream goal or something. Who knows? But long and short, yeah, Pragmata is a very special game to me. I think it does a very good job in just its theming and its creativity and its gameplay. It's so good, and I love it to death. So you know, easy, like 9.5 out of 10 for me game. I had such an incredible time with it, and I can't wait to see what else they do with more fun, unique concepts like this, because I don't think they were expecting it to be a hit like that. Or maybe they were, I don't know. When the way they were advertising it, yeah, they did a very good job in cooking up the marketing for this one. So, you know, I'm super with it. But either way, I think that just about wraps it up for Future Soul as well. So I'm passing the mic over in your direction, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Did you enjoy Pragmata? Did you play it for yourself? Did you have a good time? Did you think that everything about it was really spectacular? It was a very fun and unique experience for you, and you had an incredible time with it? Or are you on the opposing side? Pragmata did not do it for you. Its story, its gameplay, everything about it, concept-wise, right from the get-go, just did not resonate with you, and it's just not your type of game. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just so. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm Gonzo. Thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
Doing donuts in a bin. I stay funky. Battle goes wherever I is. I stay funky. I don't know who's ready to spit. Just know you're going down with my 58 clips. I stay funky. Honey's taking back to the crib. I stay funky. Get the club popped off like pain. I stay funky. I don't know.